Well, I think the key message is the world is a very difficult and challenging place. But as a government, we are getting organised, we're marshalling our resources. There was a strategic defence review just a couple of weeks ago, and the national security strategy that has been published today also brings in the other aspects of our national security, the homeland security, the risks to the home base. So this is an important document, and crucially contained within it is a commitment towards additional spending, points that the Prime Minister has reinforced at the NATO summit in the Netherlands today.
I mean, yeah, just on that additional spending, before we get to the rest of it, you're now talking about spending 5% of GDP on defence. I mean, just a few weeks ago, it was 3.5%. I mean, that's a pretty steep rate of inflation, isn't it?
It is, but the 5% also includes other items which previously weren't calibrated into that amount. So NATO have agreed in the Netherlands that in addition to core defence spending, we'll also now seek to include other areas of national security spending.
So you can basically just kind of artificially inflate the number to get to 5%. Is that the idea?
That's not the idea, Sophie. It's more about thinking about our national security in the round. So the defence component of it is absolutely mission critical, but we also need to think about the resilience of the UK, our infrastructure, our resilience to a range of different threats, whether that's cyber, whether that's hostile state activity, whether that is a range of different threats that as a country we face. And the National Security Strategy brings all of that together so we can think about it in the round.
So the strategy says that there's one part that really jumped out at me. It said this: for the first time in many years, we have to actively prepare for the possibility of the UK homeland coming under direct threat, potentially in a wartime scenario. What does that mean? What are we talking about here?
Well, I think that gives a sense of the nature of the world that we are living in. The world is, I think, probably more dangerous than at any point during my lifetime. And as a government, we've got an absolute responsibility to make sure that we are keeping the public safe. We take that very seriously.
What does it say? The possibility of the UK homeland coming under direct threat. What does direct threat mean? Could that be cyber attacks? Are we talking about missiles? Are we talking about invasion? Like, what does that mean?
We're talking about a wide spectrum of different threats. I mean, cyber is a good example. The nature of the cyber threat that we face is very significant. That's why there's a lot of work taking place across government to make sure that we are best geared to respond to that significant threat.
But it could also be missiles, for example. Is that what this is saying?
It is a more general point about the nature of the world that we live in. We can't be remotely complacent about the fact that we are an island. We face a number of threats from our adversaries.
But I feel like we need to be really, you can't just drop this on us, the possibility of the UK homeland coming under direct threat, potentially in a wartime scenario. What does that mean?
Yeah.
This is written down here. What does it mean?
So it means that over the coming years, and I think there's a balance to be struck between making sure that the public are aware and not alarmed. I'm not in the business of alarming anybody. I'm in the business of making sure that the United Kingdom has the resources in place to guard against a wide spectrum of threats.
What threats? What is the wide spectrum of threats?
Well, I've given you one example, which is cyber.
Yeah, I can tell that's one you're comfortable talking about, but what are we talking about?
It's not just that I'm comfortable talking about it. It's a threat that we encounter every single day. I mean, look at the attack that's taken place on Marks and Spencer's and on a range of other UK-based entities. So that is something that we are ensuring that we can guard against.
But this is not what we're talking potentially a wartime scenario. A wartime scenario is not a cyber attack on Marks and Spencer's, is it? That's something. What are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about hostile activity from a range of malign actors, which includes a hostile state threat that we know that we have to work very hard to guard against. The Director General of MI5 spoke about this in his annual threat lecture a couple of months ago. For example, he spoke about the fact that there have been 20 plots disrupted in recent years that originate from Iran. So it's those kind of malign activities that we have to guard against. And this strategy is about ensuring that we are best placed to do that.
Can I ask you about what kind of active preparation for this looks like? Because it feels like this is about getting all of us prepared. Are we talking about air raid drills, stockpiling? What kind of things does that mean?
Well, I need to be very careful not to alarm the public. This is about the infrastructure of government. It's about the police. It's about our armed forces. It's about our intelligence services. It's making sure that the national security architecture is properly geared, appropriately responsed, in order to respond. But that is not something that we do on our own. That is something that we do very closely with our allies, both in terms of our Five Eyes allies, but also working very closely with international partners. And that's why the Prime Minister is at the NATO summit discussing these kind of issues.
I did just want to talk to you a bit about welfare as well, because we know that many Labour MPs are deeply unhappy about cuts to PIP payments, about disability benefits, including the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan. Do you agree with him that this is the wrong thing for Labour to do?
Well, I completely understand the strength of feeling about this particular issue. What I would say is that there are a number of very positive measures in this bill. So, for example, there is £1 billion of money specifically set aside to support people to get into and stay into work. That is based on a scheme that was actually designed in my own constituency. That will deliver meaningful benefits for tens of thousands of people around the country. If we can't get this legislation through next week, that will fall. And there are a number of other
So you're basically
measures.
telling, the London Mayor, as many as 119 Labour MPs who are prepared to vote this down, saying, look, I understand you don't like this bit, but kind of hold your nose for the greater good.
What I'm saying is that this bill will deliver very meaningful difference for communities and for families right around the country.
Do you support the change specifically to PIP payments?
There is 1,000 people being added to PIP every single day. That is completely unsustainable. We've inherited a welfare system that has to be reformed. There is no route to social justice. Our country won't be successful if we allow people to remain on benefits for protracted periods of time. We've got to reform the arrangements, and contained within this bill are a number of very positive measures. So, for example, if you're disabled and you want to get into work, there is a new measure within this bill called the right to try. If we can't get the legislation through next week, those disabled people will not get the right to try. There is going to be a rebalancing of universal credit. And as I say, there is very significant resource specifically to support those people into work. So whilst I completely understand that there are strong feelings about this, and a number of my colleagues have signed an amendment, if that amendment were to be successful, this bill would fall, and all of the very good and meaningful measures that are contained with this important piece of legislation would fall.